Car audio. What is the future of car audio? We have Ray Choy joining us from FX Audio. He's a judge when it comes to DB drags. He's known worldwide. And we're going to have a quick discussion with him around where we see the future of car audio and car audio events. Welcome to Coast Car Talk. You know what I like about having Ray on this podcast? He's got that radio voice.
He does.
He does.
You've got a really good voice for this man.
Thanks. And Ray's been, DB Drag now for how many years?
I've been actively doing DB Drag since like 1998.
That's crazy.
So back then I was a competitor though. You know, I fell in love with car stereos way back when I was really young. Before I could even drive, actually, I was building subwoofers and, subwoofer systems out of my mom and dad's garage with a table saw that I bought for $5.
Yeah.
So, but I just loved it, and I was going to school and that kind of was a sidebar, and I ended up buying FX Audio and just building loud systems. Like I just loved it. Yeah. Then we started traveling, doing car shows and stuff like that. And then I had to give up competing because it was just too expensive to hire judges to come host all these big events and stuff like that. So I decided I'd become a judge myself.
Yeah, and quite a judge. Feel free to brag here because you get flown around the world to do this.
I was I got a real odd email from Google because they track everything. But at the end of the year, I got an email that showed all the different places that I'd been to, and it said I'd traveled 149,000 kilometers last year.
Crazy.
Wow. So, I've been all over the world, like literally, it says 3.7 times around the world.
Yeah, brag. You send me videos from competitions in Germany, like South America,
Well, let's see. Last year I was in Germany. I was in Greece. I was in Italy. I was in Ubatuba, Brazil. I was in China. And then I was in Australia. Can't remember if I was in Japan last year, if it was the year before that, but I
think your point is you're a highly sought out individual.
Yeah, and all over the US. We did this crazy road trip to where was it now? Oklahoma City was part of it. Louisville, Kentucky. That's where the finals was.
Right.
But man, just long road trips. They were fantastic though.
Yeah. Wow.
So who's seeking you out? Is it the event organizers, like the drag organizers, or is it?
So event organizer. So if you're hosting an event in Greece, for example, and you want to have an international judge come to your particular event, you call me up and say, hey, Ray, are you busy or free this weekend? And away we go. So
how many Rays are there? You know what I mean? Is there a large judging pool that they can draw from, or are you guys pretty tightly knit group?
No, there's quite a few of us. Some just don't like to travel. Some don't want to travel. Some feel that it's not worth their time or money to travel.
How would somebody in Brazil get your name?
DBD, the DBDRA, the DB Drag Racing Association, is based out of the U.S. Wayne Harris is the owner. So they would contact him and say, hey, listen, we're looking for, and he'd say, this is who we recommend, or this, et cetera, et cetera.
Gotcha.
So.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And what's the process like? You fly in. Obviously, these are major events, right?
Yes, they
Hundreds of competitors, or
well, the last big event was 265 competitors.
Wow.
So there's some other bigger events. Punkadao, for example, Insane Sounds in Brazil, they'll have like 1,000 competitors.
That's.
I could show you some videos afterward and stuff like that, but it's pretty crazy.
You provide us a link. We'll leave it in the descriptions. But the strange thing is, we don't take this the wrong way, right? We were at your Canadian finals. There weren't hundreds there. Right?
No.
And when speaking for Driven specifically, car audio it's an important part of our judging system, right? It's at times when we've had our systems running, 25% of the points, right, is car audio. But we're seeing a lot less of that now. It seems to be a lower on the priority, right? And generally speaking, 12 volt itself from a competitive perspective, or sorry, not 12 volt, but like subwoofers, amps, car audio installations, even like large bass competitions. Do you find that there's a decline? Because I certainly am seeing a little bit of that in the last probably 10 years. Right?
Absolutely. Over the past 10 years, there's certainly been a decline in North America as far as car audio stuff is related. But in other parts of the world, like in Brazil and China and Japan and Russia and most of Europe, it's on a, increase right now.
Right. Right.
So, I mean, a lot of it is that, those markets are, typically 5 to 10 years behind where we are right now. And that's why, is that they're still growing. In the last couple of years, though, we've seen an increase as far as the number of competitors and participants at our local events. So that's good.
Great. That's encouraging.
It's fantastic.
Yep.
Just as an example, so last year we did an event in Regina. We had 25 competitors and about 50 or 60 spectators come out to take it in. The year before that, we had like 13 competitors.
Okay.
So it almost doubled in a matter of a year just because we had done one event there and people were interested in it. And when we came back to do it a second time, like 25, it's like, bam.
Yeah, but that's a far cry from what I would call, like a big event.
Oh,
right?
yeah, for sure. These are all small events, but I mean, you got to start somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, our whole initiative last year was to bring the show to you guys. Because I mean, if you've never seen it, heard it, done it, know anything about it, you would never want to go to do it.
Yes.
I mean, you would never travel somewhere to go do something that you've never heard of, seen, or done anything with, right? So if we bring the show to you and you can experience it, you're like, man, that was cool. I'm going to come visit some of these other shows and stuff like that. And that's kind of how it starts again, right?
Yeah, and it actually is a lot more than just a measurement, right?
Absolutely.
It is a I learned about pit crewing, right?
Yeah.
I learned about the various classes you have, right? It is very inclusive in how you do this.
Yeah, so I mean, there's multiple formats of competition inside of DB Drag Racing. 4 particular ones. DB Drag Racing specifically is the loudest SPL. We have 13 categories in there based on how many modifications you have in your vehicle, how big your sound system is, measured on wattage and or number of subwoofers, depending, if you get into the bigger classes and stuff like that. We have a format called base race, which is exactly like bracket racing. So you qualify in a particular category, and the goal is to maintain that category without going out. You can't start early, you can't go over at any point in time. Just like in bracket racing, you qualify once. If you go over your speed, you're bumped out, right? So same thing for SPL. We have a top dog format, which is very similar to base race, except for you do the qualifying and competition all at the exact same time. Same idea though. First 10 seconds kind of sets your delta. The remaining 20, you just go head to head, and whoever's closest to the 9.9 is the winner. If you tie, it immediately adds 10 seconds. So it's just like a race car thing. You make checkpoint 1, adds 10 seconds. Now you're still competing against the competitor in the next lane to you. The longest run I seen was in Louisville, Kentucky. We had one that ran 4 minutes and 50 seconds or something like that, or 4 minutes and 30 seconds. It was long. These guys boom, 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 and they are controlling their systems. 9.9. You cannot go over 0.1 and you're done, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it's tight.
That's and I wish, like I said, we at Driven have had quite a few DB drags. The Edmonton one, we've had it.
Yeah, for sure.
Tried it in Toronto, did not get the competitors, right? And I'm looking across Canada here, and I know in Vancouver, surprisingly, there's a lot of guys doing car audio still. A lot of great shops.
There's a lot of really good shops there. I was actually just there yesterday, in fact. Anyways, first of all, let's go back. The fourth format of competition is Cyclone. It's more geared towards your show vehicles because there's 10 points or 10 checklist points as far as how your system is done, whether it has subs, whether it has mids, whether it has tweeters, whether you have aftermarket amplifiers, whether you have in-car entertainment as far as video. Do you have like amp racks or lighting? Is the system complete? Like, is there any raw wood in there and stuff like that? So we have 4 categories in there. We have a no wall class, a wall class, an extreme class, and a demo class. Those are kind of like the big vehicles that you see where you open up the doors and they're just filled with speakers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that was the last thing about the 4 different classes of competition inside of DB Drag Racing. I was just in Vancouver yesterday. I stopped at my friend's shop, BPG. Fantastic bunch of guys and stuff like that. But I mean, just as a totality, I mean, like the Vancouver area, there's just more populace, right?
Right.
And that's part of, I mean, if you got 1% of like 100, you have one person, you have, 1% of 1,000, you have 10 people, right? So just sheer volume, dictates that they're going to have a higher, percentage of people doing it. So.
Right. Right. I mean, when we look at the exhibitors who come out and even the vehicles that compete at Driven,
Yeah.
We're finding way more quality install, more investment into stereo and 12-volt installs in Vancouver, right? And we're just not seeing that, especially with the younger people, right? So, like, I grew up on this, right? I remember cruising down Jasper Ave. You didn't have a subwoofer blurring.
You're not that guy. You're
and
not
you didn't,
cool.
yeah, you didn't, and it didn't matter what car you're driving, right?
Yeah,
There weren't body kits back then. There weren't, like wide bodies and fancy wheels. We just had,
It was one of the first mods that,
Yes.
that guys would look at was stereo.
yes.
Yeah, for sure. Like you were saying, I mean, it was one of the first mods, but now we have a lot more available to us. Rims, tires, body kits, lowering kits, lighting, paint, wraps. I mean, tint. Like it goes on and on and on.
On and
right?
on.
There's
Yep.
like a lot of different things that you can do
Yeah. And
compared to what we had back in the day, right?
Yeah, and I think, and I'm not. This is just my opinion, but I think that we're not dealing with the '90s Delco GM systems. Sound systems coming from the factory are much better than they were 10 years ago. And at some point, that has to filter down even to the younger guys, right? Like his mom's Camry's got a sub in it from the factory.
I was just in my minivan, and the stereo sounds amazing in there, right? I would never touch it or make it upgrade, do an upgrade to it.
Yeah, we
so that's
see
part
that.
of it, I'm sure.
Yeah,
right?
for sure. A lot of the newer systems, car manufacturers realized that, aftermarket, 12-volt stereo stuff was taking out a big chunk. So they said, why don't we just build better sound systems? Then we can make the money. Newer vehicles are so integrated with their infotainment systems that you virtually cannot take out the radios out of them because they have a big touchscreen in there that has your climate control, your like everything. Like it's all integrated now, right?
Right. So have you seen, being a shop owner, a decline in business from that, or has it changed in different? And you're still in business, obviously, but how has it changed?
The type of stuff we do is definitely different. I mean, we used to do a lot of, car radios and speakers and stuff like that. We do less radios now, but we still do lots of speakers, amplifiers, and subwoofers. We do a ton of brand new vehicles, even 2020 vehicles where we put, amplifiers and subwoofers in there. One of the things that is still lacking a little bit on even the really nice high-end sound systems like Mark Levinson system, for example, will have good high-end, but it just missing that really bottom-end, low-end rumble. So we still have a fair bit of business on that end of things.
Right. And when it comes to equipment and the technology, has it changed much?
Well, I mean, audio is audio, right? What has really changed is the way that we have to do our installations. Previously, like you were saying, in the old 1990s Delco radio, I mean, you can just pop that baby out, put a new one in, and start wiring, and away you go. But now with the infotainment systems that we have, you cannot, take those out. So what we have to do is figure out where we can get a good analog audio source into our system. Typically, a lot of these systems are digitally sound processed. They'll have like equalization to make the, inexpensive speakers sound as good as they possibly can. So we have to take that stuff out and, de-equalize it and put it into a flat signal before we can, start building our systems in it, if that makes sense.
But just a bit of a tangent before you get too far
Sure.
into this. I'm curious, back to the DB drag stuff.
Yeah.
Is there any judging done as far as like the subjective stuff, like sound quality? Is that ever something that gets judged, or is it just, it's too subjective, too hard to pinpoint and quantify?
That's a great question, actually. So one of the things that we really wanted to do is inside of DB drag racing is to make it less subjective. Everything has to be, the computer is basically what does all of the judging. That's why we just have checkpoints. You either have it or you don't have it. Okay. A lot of people like it for the fact that it's really fair because it's not up to, you know what, you're kind of one of those guys that likes systems that are totally stealthy. You're one of those other guys that likes them really flashy. So this guy gets better points because of this. And we've seen this, year after year in a lot of different formats. Like IASCA, for example. I remember competing back in IASCA in 1995. One of these events that I went to, the judge that was doing it, he just didn't like the gear that I had because he was brand specific to XYZ brand and I had something totally different. So he marked on my sheet, I had the sound is terrible, no center channel. And I'm like, dude, like pull this grill off. The center channel's right there and it's blaring in your face. What are you talking about? I have, but that's just because it was so subjective is like how they felt, I don't like that gear, so I'm not going to market like that. So we removed just about all of that as far as inside of DB Drag Racing.
Okay.
Computer does it all. We try to be, every vehicle is judged relatively the same as far as location within if you have a mic jig that's 4 inches off the dash and 12 inches off the, passenger A-pillar, it's pretty close. The odd time, depending on your, view as far as if you're looking straight through or up or down a little bit, maybe you're half an inch out. Okay. But for the most part, it's pretty straightforward for everybody.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, I just wasn't sure if that was something that you guys got into at all, and how you would even attempt something like that.
Well, that's the problem.
How do you define what sounds good? Like that's stuff. I'm not an audiophile, so I don't have that ability to really differentiate between a lot of the non-obvious stuff, which I'm sure you could pick up like that.
So so the way that we judge car audio as far as sound quality portion of it, we use a real-time analyzer like an RTA mic. So back in the day, they wanted flat sound, but anybody that has ever heard a system that's totally flat, it sounds like garbage. Okay. The human ear actually likes to hear anywhere from a 3 to a 9 dB hump in the bass region because it takes a little more energy to move your eardrum in order for you to hear. It also likes to have a little bit of a roll off when it gets to the really high frequency because you don't want it piercing your ears. And that's how the normal human ear likes to hear things. Okay. So what we do inside of DB Drag Racing is we don't really care how you have your system set up as long as the deviations between each octave. So there's 30 bands of equalization or 30 bands of audio that we look at. As long as each band is less than 3 decibels apart, you will not get what's called ear fatigue. So if you've ever listened to audio for an extended period of time and it just kind of bugs you and you don't know what it is, it's typically because, between octave 1 and the octave beside it, there's a greater than 3 decibels difference. And it's hard for your ear to adjust to, 3 dB drop is okay. You go greater than that, it makes it difficult for your ear to compensate for that. And that's what makes you sound odd or sound weird to you, but you don't know exactly what it is.
Okay.
So
interesting. Okay, good to know.
Yeah. That's actually how they compress MP3s. Actually, they take a look at all of the audio that's there, and if the deviation is less than 3 dB because your ear can't distinguish it, they compress it. They'll pull them together. That's how they make MP3 music.
The tiny files.
Yeah,
right?
correct.
So,
just all of the irrelevant information, as they call it, because you can't hear the difference between them. Compress it, and away you go.
Wow, it's quite technical.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah. I mean, it's way over my head, so I'm not even going to pretend. I'm just asking the layman questions.
That was a great question, though.
Yeah, I think part of if we're going to solve a problem for this podcast, I like solving problems for our podcast, right?
Solving problems is a good thing. I mean, everybody wants to do that.
Yeah. So
unless they're related to the technical aspects of the podcast.
Yes, those we
Business
solve
as usual.
one and another one comes, but we do solve them. Just we're losing the battle on the total, unfortunately. When we're looking at car audio and we're looking at DB Drag, getting more people interested in it and investing into car audio. What are your suggestions? Like, where do you think things have to improve? Like, how do we make it better for the car audio industry?
Well, first off, I mean, it's got to be exciting. There's got to be some action going on. There has to be some highlighting and stuff like that. People want to be famous is part of what it is. So one of the initiatives that we have right now is that we're trying to do what we call like competitor profiles or highlights. So, once a month we're going to highlight or feature a particular person and stuff like that, kind of give them the limelight.
And are you still using the same channels everybody else is using?
Yeah,
Facebook,
you betcha.
Instagram,
Facebook, Instagram.
Yeah, YouTube, right?
Yeah, you betcha.
Podcasts,
whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes.
I mean, if you think about it, the average person nowadays could become like a YouTube star.
Oh God, yeah.
Right.
We just, we're not seeing car audio YouTube stars. We see a lot of like Janky Bill type of like car mod.
Well, there are some, right? Car audio related, stars like, Steve Mead, for example. He's the first one that comes to mind. I don't know how many followers he's got. He's probably got close to maybe a million followers now.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, so,
it's
there's
out
quite a
there.
few of them. Yeah, I mean, Mark from CarAudioFabrication has in the hundreds of thousands of followers and stuff like that. Mobile Solutions, as a company, they have a bunch of followers. I don't know the statistics because I am rarely on any of that type of social media stuff. In fact, I don't even have Facebook. So
Notice that. Getting hold of you. It's always interesting, but you respond, which is good. But back to that, is it just the we talked about new cars having the good stereos out and there's just less interest, but how do you see us getting more people into it?
well, first off, we'd have to get kids off their phones.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The second thing is that you'd have to get a bunch of bad drivers off the road. Because, I mean, here's a really good example. My daughter, she's 17 and she doesn't even have her driver's license now. I remember when I was like young, I'm like, I can't wait till I turn 16 because I definitely want my driver's license.
We had the same discussion in a podcast. The theory is now it's how do you
They
explain
could
it?
get the engagement from their phone that we used to have to go outside and
Correct.
congregate to
Yeah,
get.
absolutely.
So now they can do the exact same thing without getting off the couch. So that, in my opinion, the drive for that, the car doesn't equal freedom anymore. The phone does.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. If you want to watch a kid suffer, take away their charger.
Awesome.
You can see the anxiety build up as their percentage of their battery just goes down. You're like, I don't have a charger. What am I gonna do?
So true.
The flip side of that coin is if you got young kids, get them the 10-foot charge cords.
Oh yeah.
It's a game changer for them.
The different purpose, right?
Different purpose. I'm saying the opposite, the
that's
flip side of that.
Yeah.
That's the babysitter, right? The
Yeah.
tablet's the babysitter. But to your point about just young people, their interests have changed, is what you're saying. Right?
Absolutely.
Yep.
I mean, just like Jeff said, I mean, people are just, they can create a little group and they can do their Snapchats and they can FaceTime each other and they can live vicariously through their phones now. They don't actually have to go there and share the experience with them. They can literally hit a button on their phone and, hey, show me around. You know what? Can I see what's in that corner? And they can just walk over to their other phone and just say, hey, this is what you're looking at, right? So,
Right. Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge part of it for sure. I mean, again, like I said, if we can generate some excitement around it, if we can, generate some, spotlighting and stuff like that to put them in the limelight and make them feel like they're important and famous and stuff like that, that'll definitely bring some of them in and stuff like that. One of the things that we changed up is as far as even how we do awards and stuff like that, we went to like an Olympic style podium, where you get a first, a second, and a third. You get called, you stand on your podium, you get your medal delivered to you and stuff like that. So you feel like you're, that special person, the three of you standing up there for a second and third, all eyes on you and stuff like that, right?
I still think you've got some of the best trophies
Thank
the
you.
in the
belt.
game. I know. I love it. I want
belt,
it.
Yes. We should do that for maybe for Driven.
Yeah, no, honestly, I was just blown away by those.
Yeah.
Like, and to your point, a guy like me that's, again, not an audiophile, not heavy into it, but now you're putting something on the table that I want. So, you know what I mean? Like, it's just another way to draw them in.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, we had to get creative with like our awards and stuff like that. I remember I'd taken a big hiatus from DB Drag Racing and other than just working at the stores because, I mean, I had baby number 6 and it was just really time for me to focus on my family. So I spent about 5 years out of like doing
That's
no
a different
shows,
that's a different podcast.
altogether, right?
Yeah, that's next level stuff.
But when I came back, I mean, we did one show in August in conjunction with the Grove Cruise out in Spruce Grove. We had 13 competitors come out and they're like, oh, this is so awesome. And we were thinking, man, maybe I'll get back into it. We'll just do like one show a year, have something fun. Come February, I was getting phone calls already from like a multitude of people. Hey man, I heard you guys had a show last year. Will you guys be doing more shows? And that's just kind of how it's growing. Now at the average show, we get somewhere between, 25 to 50 competitors, depending on
Yeah, there were
how
a lot
big
of
the event-
competitors
yeah, so-
in the one that we went to.
Yeah, for sure. I think we had maybe 42 or somewhere around there.
Yeah, and what I like about it's a small group, but it was like genuinely fun. There wasn't this aura of competitiveness. There wasn't this people are competitive, but in a friendly manner, right?
For sure. So that the term I use is frenemies, we're friends outside of the lanes, but we're enemies as soon as we roll up beside each other because, I mean, one person obviously has to lose for the other person to win, right? So we're all friends outside the lanes. So you roll in, we're enemies. Like, I'm taking you down.
But it's different when it comes to Driven. We know that a lot of people don't get along. There's a lot of the evil eye made, right, in our shows. But it was kind of a fun thing, like people getting along, afternoon of just fun, right?
Well, I mean, that's a great atmosphere to cultivate. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? That welcoming, inclusive, non-mocking, like that's the vibe I got, was that everybody was just like, yeah, man, cool. Check it out. Check out what I got. And there was a lot less alpha nonsense, egos. And
I mean, so you touched on a really good word, inclusive. So I've had this saying for years now. Inside of like everything that I do, it's always inclusive. It's never exclusive. So, I mean, it's open for anybody to come. I readily share my knowledge with everybody that I ever talk to. If you ask me a question, I'm going to tell you. And my thought process behind this is that, I mean, if I hold all the knowledge, basically, I'm here and everybody else is down here. I always have to be I'm the only one that's thinking about what the next step is. If I educate everybody when they come through this, door and they're talking to me and we're talking about sound, SPL specifically, and they're like, how do I get loud? How do I do this? If I educate everybody and bring everybody to the same level as I am, it makes it so that I'm not the only one thinking about the next level. Now that they're here, they're like, hey man, what can I do to get louder? What can I do to change? What can I do to test? And now we're all thinking about what's the next level, and then we share with each other, right? So.
And that collectively moves everything way
Absolutely.
faster than if it was just you towing the line, 100%. Right?
So, I mean, way back in the day, I'm going to say 1999 to 2004, there was 3 Finnish competitors that basically dominated the entire DB drag racing circuit. The only guys that ever did over 175 DB consistently for year after year after year. So people started, accusing them of cheating and stuff like that.
Give us an idea what 175 dB means.
Okay, so if you were standing on the pad of a shuttle rocket launch, that's 170 dB.
Jeez.
Okay. I was,
so loud.
It's very, very loud. So a 777, I think, is one of the bigger jets. So if you were standing beside the engine at full roar, that's 147 decibels. So 175 dB is very, very, very loud. But so anyways, basically around 2005, they shared their, how they build their systems to be so loud with a bunch of people. And now everybody has the exact same design, because they got to the point where, like, listen, first of all, it's no fun being the only one at the top. Mm-hmm. 2, everybody started accusing them of cheating, even though they weren't. Like, I'd check these vehicles, I'd certify them, I'd crawl through them. I'm like, yeah, this is totally legit. Mm-hmm. They were just innovative in the way that they were thinking about how, the sound waves moved inside the vehicle, et cetera, right? So.
Amazing.
Yeah, crazy stuff.
Well, it opened my eyes to DB drag and the whole, how much more there is to learn in this part of the automotive aftermarket.
Absolutely.
And we'll have all the links for all the DB drag information.
Yeah, for sure.
And we'll hopefully get you out to Driven again and
absolutely.
And what's the closing? Do we have an actual closing thing now?
No, we never came up with one. I just said we needed to.
Yeah, so we just.
But let's just go with technical difficulties to be determined.
Yeah.
Well, so far my camera's still working. I mean, I can see myself.
Is it say recording?
Running. Yeah, it says 29 minutes and 9 seconds. So we're still doing really good.
Excellent. Thank you, Ray.
No, thank you guys for having me. It's fantastic.
Great catching up, man.
Yeah, absolutely.